Hello everyone, today we are going to learn how to do ears. Now, ears are difficult, one because they are mostly made out of a bunch of ridges, so there's lines and lots of shading, and two because everyone's ears look so different, and when you shift them, all those ridges also shift, so we get a bunch of weird angles. Today I'm going to teach you an approximation of an ear, and we're going to look at one together. So please make sure your sketchbook is labeled with ears. This is our demo and with the date for today. So we are going to look at this ear here, and you can see that there are various parts to the ear that we can break down. So if I were to draw a little diagram on top of it, we can split the ear into these basic 5 parts. So we'll start up at the top. You have what's called the helix of the ear. That's like the shell of it going curling inwards and out. You can think of it like a question mark. So you can see at the bottom right there, it leads down into a lobe. If it's pierced, it looks even more like a question mark. So helix. Then underneath that, you have this kind of Y shape, and that's called the antihelix. So helix, and underneath that creates a little Y shape that's called the antihelix. You have skipping down, we're going to go into your lobe. And then you have that red area which kind of connects into your face, and that's called the tragus. Now the holes between the antihelix and the tragus, that kind of mass there, we're going to call the concha. And so these are the main parts we want to break into. Lots of shading, but those are essentially the areas that you want to simplify it into. So how about we attempt to draw this, and we'll label it afterwards. So when we're drawing a face, especially one that's going out sideways, remember that your ear goes from the top of the eyes to where the nose is, and then it'll connect down and create your jaw. Your neck will go somewhere behind there. So some people are going to have more pronounced lobes. Some people are going to have ones that kind of go in. I'm going to start with kind of an oval shape, and then to simplify, we're going to think of it as like a C. A lot of people make the ears very straight like this, but there's a slight tilt to it. So if you can see on the screen, there's a slight tilt that happens to your ear. It'll probably connect about there like that, depending on the person. Then it'll go out, kind of down. There's a little bump right there for some people. And then you have the lobe, which can attach directly, or you can kind of see it dip down and then go back up. So this is my rough approximation of an ear. It's about twice as tall as it is wide, roughly. So there's my ear. I like to start from the outside going in. So the first part that I can try to do is the outermost part, so the helix. And that's going to start, it's going to curl inwards. And remember, this is the one that's like a question mark. So it's going to curl inwards and then kind of follow the shape of the ear and fade away. So follow the shape of the ear and then fade that away. You can also go in and make it a little bit more organic. So it's not going to be a perfect line probably, but there might be some distinct areas that are a little warbly. So we have that portion. That's going to lead us down into the lobe part, and she has a pierced ear, so just to identify that I've gotten to the lobe part, it's there, the lobule. And then I'm going to go up, and there's that little bump that comes out of my face, so I like to add that next. So add that little hill there, and notice that that curves up and in. So we're going to end up making almost like a bean shape of a hole, almost. So up, in, past past where we started on the helix. Up and in. Just like that. Okay. So got the tragus, that guy. That hooped down a little bit and then went up. Now we're going to create our kind of Y shape to make the anti-helix. And that's right here. So instead of trying to draw that out, I'm going to draw out where we see the shadows. So I'm going to create that little loop and then this one, and that'll make kind of like a bubble letter Y. So you see it kind of like that. So I'm going to go here and create this little loop. I'm going to go on the other side, bring that down. Sometimes these get really wide, but I'm going to go like that. There's times where you see like a little bump in the Y, so you want to kind of address the little bump that might happen. And then that also will essentially lead back into there, but that's just a ridge that eventually disappears. So these are really the main parts of the ear. That first kind of helix that we made, now that we have our tragus, we can kind of separate them a little bit. But this is really going to come down to shading now. So you want to look for gradients and areas that you can address. Usually the parts that'll be darkest are going to be those inner parts. So here, here, and there. So let's fill those out and look for some shading. So up in this small kind of hole, it's darkest up towards the ridge. So that outer helix, that shell of your ear, is really going to create some nice dramatic shadows. Notice where it's darkest is right where it would cast a shadow inside of there, so it looks like it's going kind of deeper in. You should feel that if you kind of press along your ear, and eventually it'll fade. We have this inner part under that kind of Y that we made, and I'll adjust the shape of that as I go. So I'll make that kind of go in more. And then this corner as well, and that'll fade to like a medium gray. I don't really want these super harsh outlines that I have right now, so I'm going to go in and kind of clean those up and just let it look like shadows. And right now the rest of my ear is white, which really doesn't look natural. So I'm going to take this, and in those ridges I'm also going to look for areas of shadow. So along here, the outer shell, I'll see a little bit. One edge of it will probably be a little bit darker depending on where the light is. So along this edge, that'll kind of fade. Again, we don't want anything to be super white, so we're going to make this kind of grayer. Go around my outline. Get the bottom of it so it looks like it's turning away from us, and we want that ridge inside of here. So I'll look at that ridge, and the anti-helix is going to get some shading from the ridge as well. Then eventually it'll have its own kind of shadows. It's kind of like a tube. It's just curving a lot, so you want the sides of the tube usually to have some mid-tone or some core shadow, and then you want it to fade. So same thing for this ear. You want it to look like ridges that are fading, some of them cast shadows, and finally it'll get into here. You can sort of shade a little bit of the rest of the face, but that's technically all we need. And so if it's not 100% perfect, most people aren't going to pay that much attention unless it's literally a picture of an ear, so we should be fine. We can address anything that needs to be addressed, but those are those same parts. So as we do, we're going to label, and I will bring back our labels over here. So we have the tragus is that part right there. We have the helix, which is the outer part of your ear. The antihelix is that curve inside that kind of has that Y shape. The concha is going to be that hole that you see between the tragus and the antihelix. And finally, the lobule is down at the bottom. So make sure you have all of that. And we're going to look at how other people have similar things occurring on their ears. So as the lighting changes, a lot of the different holes and ridges will have different looks to them. So those parts that were really dark over here are really light. Over here, they're even more dramatic. And then as we start to turn, so as a person's actually facing us, you'll see a lot of those ridges get squished in. So over here, you have two different ears. And I can still lay out those same basic parts. So we still have the helix, the antihelix, the concha, the tragus, and the lobule showing. But they just get squished and jutted out in different ways. So now it's time for you to practice ears.